It's really great to be able to talk to you a little bit about Poulton. In 10 or 12 minutes, I can only give you a very, very brief and quick overview of what is an amazing and incredibly well-preserved multi-period archaeological excavation. But today we're focusing on the Iron Age, and it really is illuminating the site of Poulton in Cheshire, is illuminating Lowland Iron Age settlement in northwest England. And Cheshire itself, it's a little bit of a black hole for the Iron Age. Now, there is a lot of really good, amazing, very talented archaeologists who've been working to help illuminate the Iron Age. Dan Garner, Tony Wilmot, Ron Cowell, Rachel Poper, just a few of the many. And if I didn't mention the name, Rob Philpott, if I didn't mention any names, it doesn't mean that they're not brilliant. And there's a lot of really good work going on. But a lot of the sites that have been found, the lowland sites especially, are very poorly preserved. So there is a very southern and eastern centric view of the Iron Age in England. So it's still a little bit of a black hole. We do have lots of hill forts. They're recognized. There has been a lot of work done on aerial photography and so forth, but trying to find well-preserved and possibly sites of status in the region, especially Cheshire, Merseyside and Lancashire, is very difficult. So it is a bit harsh. We do have plenty of hill forts, which have been done in a brilliant publication within the last few years of Dan Garner, and lots of other people contributed to that. And that's really gone well. And there are excavated lowland settlements, but they're often poorly preserved. So the problem is, how do we challenge this very southern and eastern centric view of the Iron Age when preservation is often very, very poor? Well, it comes to Pulton, which is 5 miles south of Chester. It's a small rural village. There's no through road. It's halfway between Chester and Wrexham. And usually at this stage, I would give a big talk about the landscape that you can see from this map. I haven't got the time to do that today, but the first thing is, it is actually a big 55-acre agricultural field, 55 acres. It is very unassuming to the eye, but it is next to the River Dee. So fresh water, a nice Iron Age name, good transport for trading on tribal boundaries and so forth. And the land itself is also overlooking a floodplain. So this is the 55 acres of Chapel Field, and it overlooks a floodplain. It's classic glacial till boulder clay, but it overlooks a floodplain which has got the old Pulford Brook feeding into it, the historic boundary of England and Wales. And when it does flood, it leaves behind very good nutrient-rich silts, which are ideal natural fertilizers in an area which has been traditionally very poor for being in history and prehistory, for being able to grow reliable crops. And here's a quick picture of it. We're overlooking the floodplain. This is Chapel Field. So it occupies a spare in the landscape. You've got a nice gentle slope to the east, great for beaching boats, a really quite steep, and you can see it in the bottom picture, a steep, drop to the floodplain below, but it's actually a very well situated area. And this is what it looks like when it's floods. It's actually, a very extensive floodplain, for several square kilometers. So it's a really good site. It's also overlooking Wales, so you do get the chance to trade both inland and out into the Irish Sea. Now, how did we find it? We found it by accident. We were looking for a lost abbey. We found the medieval chapel. Now, the medieval chapel has amazing preservation of human remains, but that's another story. When we were excavating the medieval chapel, we found a lot of Roman finds, and I'm talking thousands upon thousands of Roman finds spanning the mid to late 1st century AD, right the way up to the end of the 4th century AD. So we went looking in the landscape for Roman buildings. And here you can see Trench 1 is a site of a chapel. About 60 to 80 meters north of the chapel, we found through geophysical surveys circular features. We thought it might be looking at some kind of Roman temple. But lo and behold, we found the best preserved lowland Iron Age settlement ever discovered in northwest England. And it's brilliant. Lots of intercutting circular ditches and associated settlement features that come with centuries of repeated building, rebuilding, demolition of roundhouses. And because of the clay, these were quite deep ditches that went round the roundhouses. And you can see from this plan here of Trench 50, which contains multiple roundhouses, multiple post holes and pits. It contains Roman features and medieval features as well, that we are dealing with a very densely occupied area that was occupied for many centuries. And within this one single trench, we have over 5,000 individual finds. The preservation is unparalleled for this region, especially as quite often finds such as animal bone, pottery, they don't survive in the slightly acidic clays, but by a sheer geological fluke, our area, Cheshire, had a lot of calcite dumped in the deposited by the last glaciation, which does actually preserve bone. And there's other areas where that happens, such as Heron Bridge. Within these deep ditches that surround the roundhouses, that's where the domestic material, the material that literally everyday living rubbish, waste, it was deposited and sealed, giving it an almost perfect level of preservation. And these time capsules of what allowed us to actually piece together the first really detailed picture of Iron Age life in a single site. We've got the only major Iron Age assemblage of animal bone, over 1,000 bones so far, plenty more coming up with each season. And you can see a cattle jaw in the top left, or horse jaw in the top right, cattle bones, jaws and ribs in the bottom picture. In fact, these are the species that are represented. Please read the article. It gives a very detailed interpretation of what is going on here. But cattle, sheep and pig, animals, domestic animals are there. They're the most abundant, and you have horse, hare, dog, red deer, roe deer, wildcat, even the single, it's only a single one, but the first ever fish bone to come out of an Iron Age context in pretty much central Britain. It's one fish bone. I don't know what it's doing there. I can't tell you why it's there, but it's still the first one. We also have the first worked antler collection for this region as well, for Cheshire, from the Iron Age. A series of different basically red deer and roe deer antlers, which were collected from naturally shed deer antlers and made into a series of different items, such as pestles for grinding food. You can see in the bottom middle there, you have a possible knife handle, another knife handle in the right-hand side. You have antler cheek pieces, drilled antler in this beautiful antler in the top middle that actually forms like a toggle and has parallels with high status sites in southern England. So it really is fair on many levels. You can hear now some of the actual shed antlers that you can see. They literally collected them and they sawed and snapped off the tines to make a variety of different tools. We also have the first preserved human bone for Iron Age Cheshire. Most of them are just scraps of bone found in the rubbish, literally mixed in with the domestic refuse. And, you know, we don't know why they got there. It could possibly be that they were accidentally incorporated in after whichever rituals at death, you know, occurred, such as exclamation platforms. But it does follow a national trend where one of the trends for the Iron Age is bits of humans are found in the rubbish. So it could be excarnation, but we also have 3 unfused vertebrae from a human baby found outside Roundhouse 1, which could be the first proper Iron Age burial for the region. We have lots of salt-containing pottery. It was about 10 kilograms at time of publication. It's now over 12. So we have the largest, actually the second largest volume of Iron Age briquetage, which contains salt, ever discovered in pretty much Britain outside a production centre. We have stone tools, imported jet ring, we have a metal brooch pin, and we have Roundhouse 3, which is something very different than the others. All of them contain this material, but Roundhouse 3 is this one here. And it's one that is very different from the rest of the roundhouses. Over 50% of the material came from this one roundhouse. And it's the only roundhouse to have a solid door foundations, suggesting it might even have a second structure, you know, second floor, and it had a screen screening the entrance. And all this material, this is dated, radiocarbon dated to the 3rd to 1st century BC. Now, it's the only one, sorry, it won't be a second, to have dog burials. We have a dog burial in the center and a dog burial in the ditch near the entrance to the roundhouse. This is again an Iron Age tradition of, there's many interpretations, but they are possible sacrificial offerings to the roundhouse of your strongest, you know, basically most favored dog. And it is also another Iron Age tradition that is known throughout Britain. So we also have industrial remains. This is from Roundhouse 3 and to a lesser extent from the other roundhouses. We have deposition of an iron adze in Roundhouse 3, which shows a degree of affluence and has cultural affiliations to other sites, such as a roundhouse underneath the fort at Arbeia that precedes the fort of Arbeia. Can everyone hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah,
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, that's brilliant. I'll be very quick. We're nearly there. We also have an anvil that was placed next to it. So a glacial boulder was used as an anvil for working iron. And here's a quick view. I'm not going to read it all, but we have a very extensive recreation of the local vegetation that was both natural and farmed in the area. We know that they were what crops they were growing, that they were collecting wild gathered foods. We have 11 radiocarbon dates to make roundhouses spanning the 8th to 1st century BC. We have also done geophysical survey in the area. We found plenty more possibilities for roundhouses in the immediate and extended area, indicating this is a very large Iron Age site, either possibly a shifting site. We don't know the actual nature of the entire settlement, but it's large and over time. But we also found a D-shaped enclosure, which cuts through the roundhouses. And this one is very interesting. We see the bottom part of it there. And then in a cesium magnetometry survey, you see it's actually a capital D. So we'll talk about that in a second. We're nearly at the end. Regional and national comparisons. It is very similar to Brookhouse Farm and Brew in Stapleford, an excellent excavation, but also it's very similar to aggregated settlements south of the Pennines, which are kind of like sites considered to be of some status, which traded on rivers. So it is showing that the Iron Age in Cheshire and the northwest of England is part of a bigger, more vibrant Iron Age, and we should be included with equality in it. And the supposed porosity of Iron Age sites is more to do with developer-funded research, finding sites that aren't heavily truncated, preservation due to acidic soils, rather than the fact that they weren't here. We just got lucky. And there was an extensive Roman settlement as well, which is another talk entirely, but this isn't actually in the article, but I thought I'd let you know that our excavations last year of the D enclosure in its primary fill basically found in the primary fill, it dated to 98 to, I'm trying to see, I've just got the thing in the way, 98 BC to 53 calibrated AD in the primary fill. And here it was recut in the Roman period and has produced a massive array of finds. It was a local dump in the mid to late 1st century AD into the early 2nd century AD. And there is a very large and very interesting assemblage, which is currently undergoing analysis, such as the same in where with Felicity Wild. So just my acknowledgements, there's many acknowledgements. I would also like to single out everybody who's named here as being incredibly supportive. And I couldn't have completed it without the help of these professionals and people who often gave the time for free. You know who you are. I won't embarrass you by naming you, but it would never have made it to publication without the help of a lot of people. And with that, I've probably been more than 10 minutes, but thank you.